Starting next week, you might actually find yourself paying like a 50% premium on your toilet paper.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, because of a multi-million-dollar international standoff. So welcome to the back of the geopolitical tapestry.
It is definitely a very messy picture back here today.
It really is. Like if you walk up to a massive, beautiful tapestry in a museum, right, and you only look at the front, it makes perfect sense. It's a single cohesive image. But if you walk behind it and you look at the back, it is pure chaos.
It's knots everywhere.
Knots everywhere. Yeah, a million tangled threads and colors crisscrossing in ways that look completely random. And reading today's news feels exactly like looking at the back of that tapestry.
Which is why we need to trace where those threads actually lead.
Right, and that is our mission on this deep dive. We are looking at the August 26, 2026 edition of the Daily Grind News, and we have a stack of updates today that seem completely disconnected on the surface. So we've got grocery prices, multi-billion-dollar tech lawsuits, suddenly paused visas, and top-secret CIA meetings in Moscow.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, yeah. But before we start untangling this, I want to give a quick but important reminder. We are looking strictly at the factual reporting in today's paper.
Right.
We aren't here to take political sides or endorse any of these policies left or right. Our only goal is to map out how these maneuvers work and how they connect to our everyday lives.
Because those tangled threads of global policy, they eventually weave together and they hit us directly in the wallet.
Yes, they do.
And the economic data in this report provides a really perfect starting point, because the tension there is incredibly tight right now.
It is. So let's unpack the inflation numbers from July because they came in hot.
They did?
We are looking at a 3.7% headline rate and a 3.3% core inflation. And for a quick refresher for everyone, the headline rate is the total price of basically everything we buy, while core inflation strips out the really volatile stuff.
Right, like food and energy?
Exactly. Yeah, food and energy, just to show us the real underlying trend. And since the Federal Reserve's target is 2%, we are still hovering way, way above the finish line.
We are, yeah. And the underlying mechanism that's driving those numbers is actually fascinating, because we aren't seeing a blanket increase across the board. The cost of physical goods actually dropped.
Oh, really?
Yeah, gasoline is down 2.7%, and furnishings and durable household items, those are down 0.9%.
Oh, okay, well, that seems intuitive. I mean, supply chains have finally untangled from the whole pandemic era, so getting a couch or a car part across the ocean is cheaper than it used to be.
Right, but the services sector is the problem child here. Services spiked.
Ah.
Yeah, financial services and insurance jumped 1.2%, and housing ticked up 0.3%. And services are what economists call sticky.
Sticky, okay.
Because they rely heavily on human labor. So plumbers, insurance adjusters, bank tellers, wages for those roles are still rising, which keeps the cost of those services high even when the price of a physical couch goes down.
I see. Well, that puts immense pressure on the people pulling the economic levers then, because Federal Reserve Chair Kevin Warsh is heading into a major speech at Jackson Hole, which is essentially like summer camp for the world's central bankers.
Right, exactly.
And he has a September Fed meeting looming right around the corner. But markets are only giving a 1 in 3 chance of any interest rate relief.
Yeah, and the Treasury Department is also trying to manage the broader deficit concerns at the same time. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent just announced a $4 billion debt buyback.
Okay, and what does that actually do?
Well, the mechanics of a buyback involve the government purchasing its own older, previously issued bonds. And that helps manage interest costs and improve market liquidity.
Oh, okay.
However, according to the reporting, bond traders view a $4 billion move in our current deficit environment as a teardrop in the ocean.
A teardrop in the ocean. Wow. Well, as stressful as the macroeconomic picture is, the micro reality in this reporting is what really caught my eye.
Oh, yeah. The toilet paper.
Yes, I cannot get over the specifics here. We are officially in a trade war over toilet paper.
The U.S. Canada trade dispute has literally reached the bathroom.
It has. So starting September 8th, Canada is imposing 25% to 50% tariffs on nearly 900 U.S. products. And this is in retaliation for Washington's tariffs on Canadian goods.
Right.
And the U.S. imported $328 million worth of toilet paper from Canada in 2024. And get this, Americans use an average of 141 rolls of toilet paper per person annually.
That's wild.
We lead the world in consumption.
It sounds like a punchline, honestly, but it perfectly illustrates how deeply reliant supply chains are on cross-border harmony.
Yeah.
American manufacturers depend heavily on Canadian raw materials, like wood pulp for paper products.
Yeah.
So when you disrupt that with retaliatory tariffs, the cost isn't absorbed by the manufacturer.
No.
It gets passed down immediately to the consumer at the grocery store.
And it extends way beyond paper, too. Like Crown Royal and Canadian Club Whiskey, they face a 50% U.S. tariff. Dairy is getting hammered with 50% tariffs in both directions. There's even a threat of 50% tariffs on Canadian cars by 2027. Yet, the political messaging around this is completely disconnected from that reality at the checkout line.
You really see that divergence in the public statements. U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer claimed the fundamentals are good and suggested consumers shouldn't worry about broad impacts.
Right.
Meanwhile, Canadian PM Mark Carney is promising dollar-for-dollar retaliation.
Yeah, and the logic in Greer's statement, it's just hard to square with the math.
Yeah.
Because a tariff isn't a bill sent to the Canadian government. It is a 25 to 50% tax applied at the border, paid by the importing company, and then tacked onto the price tag for regular citizens.
Exactly.
It's like, think of the U.S. and Canada as two roommates who are passive-aggressively hoarding household supplies.
Right.
One says, oh, you're charging me to use the fridge. Fine, I'm charging you a 25% premium every time you use the bathroom.
Yeah.
The landlords aren't the ones suffering. The people living in the house are footing the bill.
When you look at the mechanics of a tariff, it is simply a government using immense financial leverage to aggressively control the physical borders of trade.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, if you trace that thread to the next major story in the source material, you see the exact same mechanism being applied to a totally different kind of border.
You're talking about the Meta settlement.
Yes.
Where the government is using massive financial penalties to build basically a digital blockade around our children.
Exactly.
So Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, they just agreed to pay up to $16.7 billion to 51 U.S. states and territories.
That figure is staggering. I mean, $16.7 billion.
It is huge.
They agreed to this settlement to head off a federal trial over allegations that Meta violated children's privacy laws and used harmful design practices. Because if they had gone to trial and lost, estimates suggest they could have been exposed to over $1 trillion in damages just based on their sheer volume of users.
Right, so they settled.
Yeah.
But the real story isn't just the money, it's the mandatory behavioral engineering they now have to implement.
Right. Like, the new rules force a default 2-hour daily limit for teens across Facebook and Instagram. And the apps will also be completely blocked between midnight and 6 a.m.
Which means they are being forced to alter the core architecture of the app itself.
Yeah.
Parents can now switch their teens to chronological feeds. Likes will be hidden by default. And extreme cosmetic surgery makeup filters are being disabled.
And that chronological feed mandate is the piece that fundamentally breaks Meta's business model.
Oh, completely.
Because when a feed is chronological, you eventually reach the end of what your friends posted today and you close the app.
Right, you're done.
Yeah. But when a feed is algorithmic, the app learns your psychological triggers and it feeds you endless escalating content to keep you scrolling. So killing the algorithm kills the rabbit hole, which directly hurts their user retention and their ad revenue.
Which explains why these changes had to be mandated by the courts rather than adopted voluntarily.
Because the source data from the trial, it revealed that Meta actually had voluntary tools available. They launched a take-a-break feature for teens.
Oh, yeah, I remember hearing about that.
Well, 2 years after that feature launched, it had an adoption rate of exactly 1.8% among weekly teen users.
Wow.
Yeah, so voluntary safety tools completely failed to protect users, so the state stepped in to force the friction into the system.
I mean, 1.8% is essentially zero, but we also have to put that $16.7 billion penalty into perspective here. Because for a company the size of Meta, avoiding a $1 trillion existential threat makes this settlement look like couch change.
It really does.
And now they are actively urging TikTok and YouTube to adopt these exact same rules.
Yes, by urging their competitors to adopt the rules, Meta is trying to turn a legal penalty into an industry-wide standard.
It is a brilliant, albeit entirely cynical business strategy.
Yeah.
It's like a driver who got a massive speeding ticket, and instead of just paying it, they demand the police force everyone else on the highway to drive 45 miles per hour too.
Right.
Like Meta knows that chronological feeds and disabled filters will hurt their user engagement. So by pushing to make those restrictions a universal standard, they ensure TikTok and YouTube have to take the exact same financial hit. It levels the playing field for them.
That's a great point. And the overarching theme here is the application of friction.
Okay.
The states are applying friction to tech companies to control digital movement. But simultaneously, the federal government is applying massive friction to control physical human movement.
Which brings us to the Trump administration's pause on immigrant visa appointments worldwide.
Yes, exactly.
According to the Daily Grind News, the administration has globally paused these appointments at embassies and consulates. And the stated reason is that State Department personnel require new training.
And that training is specifically focused on teaching consular officers how to identify applicants who might eventually rely on public benefits.
I see.
But to understand the significance of this, we have to look at the legal sequence of events here.
Right.
This worldwide pause for training comes just days after a federal judge struck down a previous, more direct policy.
Oh, that's right.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio had attempted to suspend immigrant visas from 75 specific countries, but a judge ruled he exceeded his statutory authority.
So the mechanics of the administrative state are fully on display here. I mean, the administration tries a direct executive action, like a visa ban.
Right.
The judicial branch strikes it down as illegal. So days later, the administration achieves the exact same result, halting visas, by claiming their human resources department needs to conduct consistency training.
Exactly. When a direct legislative or executive order hits a legal wall, policy goals are often rerouted through bureaucratic friction.
Right.
Because a training delay with no set timeline to resume it effectively halts the immigration process just as efficiently as a formal ban.
Yeah.
The difference is that a training delay is incredibly difficult to challenge in court because, on paper, it is merely an internal personnel procedure.
Which, from a purely analytical standpoint, it's a highly effective strategy.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at the human and economic impact, it raises major questions. Like, think about an applicant who followed every rule. They paid the exorbitant fees, and they waited years for a scheduled appointment.
Years.
Receiving an open-ended cancellation notice acts as a massive deterrent to attempting the legal immigration process at all.
Absolutely.
And if we connect this back to our earlier conversation about sticky inflation in the services sector, pausing the influx of international talent in labor only exacerbates the worker shortages that are keeping our day-to-day costs so high.
Yeah, we are aggressively applying friction at our own borders, restricting the flow of goods with tariffs and restricting the flow of talent with visa pauses.
Right.
Yet as we close those doors domestically, the final section of today's reporting shows the U.S. engaging in incredibly complex, door-opening diplomacy abroad.
Yes. The geopolitical chessboard in the Middle East and Eastern Europe is highly volatile right now, specifically regarding Saudi Arabia and Russia.
Extremely volatile.
So let's look at the Saudi element first. President Trump has submitted a massive 30-year civilian nuclear agreement to Congress. And this would place U.S. companies at the center of building Saudi Arabia's nuclear infrastructure.
Right, and constructing the infrastructure is one thing.
Yeah.
But the truly combustible element of this deal is uranium enrichment.
Oh, yeah.
The agreement includes a provision that could eventually allow uranium enrichment on Saudi soil following a 2-year study.
And that detail has non-proliferation experts sounding major alarms. Because the physical process for enriching uranium to a low level for a power plant is fundamentally the same technology used to enrich it to a high level for a nuclear weapon.
Exactly.
Once the centrifuges are spinning on Saudi soil, the technical gap to a weapon narrows significantly. So to mitigate that, the administration added a massive catch to the deal after it was already negotiated.
Yes, they did.
Oh.
The new requirement mandates that Saudi Arabia must normalize relations with Israel and join the Abraham Accords, which is a series of bilateral agreements normalizing diplomatic ties between Israel and Arab states. And they have to do this before the nuclear deal can move forward.
Which is just a highly unorthodox diplomatic strategy.
It really is.
Because Saudi Arabia formally backed away from normalizing relations with Israel following the October 2023 Hamas attack and the subsequent war in Gaza.
Right.
So offering them nuclear technology with this specific condition, it feels like handing a teenager the keys to a Ferrari, but telling them they can only start the engine if they immediately broker peace with their high school rival.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It is an exercise in extreme diplomatic leverage.
Yeah.
But to understand the underlying motive driving the U.S. to take on this level of risk, we need to analyze the other major global story in the paper today.
Which is CIA Director John Ratcliffe's extremely quiet trip to Moscow.
Exactly.
The head of the CIA went to Russia for intelligence-level talks. And the U.S. even asked Ukraine to pause their strikes on Russian cities so the American delegation could get in and out safely. A request that Ukraine notably ignored.
Right. And President Trump downplayed the trip as semi-routine. But the Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, described relations as being in a profound crisis.
Wow. Profound crisis.
Yeah. And furthermore, Russian security expert Andrei Soldatov pointed out that visits of this nature are incredibly rare.
There is a precedent for this, though, right? Like,
Yep.
former CIA Director William Burns used this exact back channel in 2022 to warn Moscow against using a nuclear weapon in Ukraine.
Yes.
So a CIA director doesn't fly to Moscow for routine maintenance.
No, they don't.
They go to address urgent, immediate crises.
Which brings us to the crucial mechanism connecting these geopolitical threads.
Hmm.
If this trip wasn't solely about Ukraine, we have to look at the invisible hand operating in both of these regions.
Okay.
Iran.
Ah.
In 2025, Russia and Iran signed a comprehensive strategic partnership treaty.
Wait, so if Iran is supplying Russia with Shahed drones for the war in Europe, and Russia is reportedly giving Iran intelligence to target U.S. military assets in the Middle East, then Ratcliffe flying to Moscow isn't just about the European front. He's going there to pressure Putin to back off his relationship with Tehran.
You've found the connecting thread.
Wow.
Yeah. Soldatov suggests the CIA trip likely involved protecting American personnel in the Middle East by addressing the Russia-Iran alliance. So the Saudi nuclear deal and the CIA's Russia trip are really two halves in the same strategy.
Oh, I see.
The U.S. is trying to build a fortified bloc with Saudi Arabia and Israel on one side, while trying to contain the expanding Russia-Iran partnership on the other.
So we are promising nuclear technology to the Saudis to keep them firmly in our orbit while simultaneously flying to Moscow to try and pry the Russians away from the Iranians.
Exactly.
It is a profoundly fragile balancing act.
It is. And every single policy choice vibrates down the line.
Yeah.
A tariff in Washington changes the price of dairy in Canada.
Right.
A lawsuit in the States changes how a teenager in Ohio experiences the internet. A strategic alliance in Moscow changes the calculus for a nuclear reactor in Riyadh.
Bringing us right back to the back of the tapestry. I mean, we've traced the threads from the grocery aisle to the highest levels of global intelligence today. But looking at the entire picture we've mapped out, it leaves us with one final, deeply provocative puzzle that isn't explicitly answered in the reporting.
Right, the contradiction between our domestic and foreign postures.
Exactly, yeah, the core tension. Like, what happens when our domestic policies actively sabotage our foreign ambitions?
Yeah.
The U.S. is attempting to broker a massive 30-year nuclear infrastructure project in Saudi Arabia to maintain global dominance. But that requires pristine logistics, global cooperation, and thousands of highly skilled engineers.
Yet simultaneously, we are escalating cross-border trade wars with our closest neighbors, disrupting the very supply chains required to build such massive projects.
Right. And we are globally pausing visa appointments, which creates a bureaucratic bottleneck that grinds the flow of international talent and personnel to a complete halt. So how exactly will the U.S. manage to supply and build a decades-long, hyper-complex nuclear project abroad if our domestic policies are shutting down borders, hiking tariffs, and leaving the legal immigration system in administrative limbo?
It's a great question. It forces us to ask if a country can successfully operate as an isolationist fortress at home while simultaneously trying to be the ultimate globe-spanning power broker abroad.
It really is a tension that seems bound to snap one of those threads eventually. Just something to mull over the next time you're paying a premium for paper goods at the grocery store. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.